Thanks, Danae, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Learning and Organizational Development, or LOD for short, session on team engagement. And this is our third and final session of this specific mini-series. We'll focus on care today. We talked about collaboration and communication the past 2 weeks, and we do plan to do some more work in these areas with the rest of the organization, so don't think that this is the end of this topic, but it is just kind of a little intro of things that we hope to expand upon in the coming years. So we do have Holly Ball, area leader from Lucas and Wood counties, area 2, joining us. She's going to kind of take the lead early on, and then I'll add just a few points on the back, but we appreciate Holly coming in here and being a partner with us and helping us out here. So Holly, I'll pass it over to you and just let me know what you need. So thanks.
Thanks, Jared. So like Jared said, my name is Holly, and I have the privilege of working in Wood and Lucas counties. I think I'm going into my 4th year, and prior to that, I was in nonprofit administration for the better part of 16 years. So that's a little bit about myself. Okay, so some of you may recognize Simon's name as an inspirational presenter and frequent TED Talk speaker. And I put this here because I've known what it's like to work for an organization with really high demands. I've also worked for places that required the same amount of hours, and yet my stress level was nowhere near where it was with the other. And I attribute that primarily to feeling cared about by the organization and caring about what I was doing and who I was doing it for and with. And so I thought this was pretty appropriate to start us off because that's what we're here to talk about, right? So without further ado, let's get into it. Each of us wears many hats throughout our days and overall time and extension, especially if we switch positions and responsibilities and roles. And so here are just some examples of what I could quickly think of. I'm sure there are even more, but you get the point. As we continue our conversation today, I want you to think about the diverse range of relationships, be it recipients of services, program participants, colleagues, or management, all the different people we engage with in our roles. Even if the discussion isn't specifically mentioning what you're thinking of in your mind, try and translate into the relationship you have in mind. I can pretty much guarantee all the tips we'll cover today can be used in more than one situation. With each hat that we wear in different roles, there are different expectations and ways to interact appropriately. And so each of those hats presents a new and possibly different opportunity to express caring in meaningful ways. So here we have the 5 love languages, and you've probably heard of them more than likely. What I want to talk about is how those translate into the workplace. So let's talk about appropriate workplace appreciation. In order to make the 5 love languages more appropriate for a workplace environment, the people who came up with them rebranded them as a concept of workplace appreciation. If you exchange love for appreciation, the theory easily adapts to office relationships. And in our discussion, I'm going to be interchanging caring and appreciation as synonyms. So that being said, there's one potential problem with appreciation at work. The folks that came up with this still include physical touch as a language. So while I acknowledge that physical touch is less important in work-based relationship and the potential for abuse exists, we still find that appropriate physical touch is meaningful. Usually it occurs spontaneously and in the context of a celebration. So a high five, a fist bump, or a Rona bump, if you will, or a congratulatory handshake. To not touch each other at those celebratory times can come across as impersonal or cold. Next slide. So quality time. And you'll see through these, I put some tangible examples, and so we can talk through those too as we go through. But overall, personal focused time and attention with a supervisor or a colleague is highly affirming for some. Others enjoy different types of time, so hanging out, more social interaction with coworkers, working together as a team project, or just having someone take time to listen to them. And the type of time desired can differ significantly depending on whether it's with colleagues, volunteers, or a supervisor. Find out which one works best and then be intentional about scheduling it in. Formal one-on-ones, you can ask for those. Don't be afraid to make the initial request of a manager or supervisor or mentor. Daily or weekly drop-ins, or even making a note in your task list once a month to check in and call that person. I find that I have to do that. I have to make a note. These are all ways to really demonstrate caring to someone who values quality time highest. So next up is acts of service. Assisting in getting a task done can be extremely encouraging to a colleague. Helping a teammate dig out from being behind, working collaboratively on a project that would be really difficult to do alone, or just working alongside them on a task are all ways to demonstrate caring and appreciation for their efforts. Extension can be really good at this with group projects, and even so much as institutionalizing it in Vita, we can report when you're co-teaching. And I find that managers' acts of service, it can be seen if you back them up with a client or with a request, not making promises on behalf of them, and really being there to support and serve them in ways that they deem best. So I kind of want to check in. Have any of you experienced either giving or receiving an act of service in your role? Anything come to mind?
And again, feel free to speak up or chat in. I am monitoring that as well.
That's okay. We'll have time to talk in a little bit. So we can move on to the next one. So tangible gifts. This is kind of tongue-in-cheek. There are many articles out there about gift giving in the workplace, especially around anniversaries, birthdays, holidays, those types of things. And so the bottom line is, do be thoughtful and don't be a creeper. I think we all as professionals should know the line. If you have to ask, chances are high it's questionable and you shouldn't give it or do it. But if you have to ask, know that HR and leadership are always there to help provide guidance before you take action. That being said, I really want to note here that the key to an effective gift in the workplace is the thought and not necessarily the amount of money spent. So taking time to notice what your colleague or volunteers enjoy. I had success when I was a volunteer manager. I reached out to coffee shops and asked for gift cards for free cup of coffee. And so I said, thanks a latte, and then gave that out to folks to help energize them for their volunteer service. And local businesses are pretty open to that type of thing. Observing hobbies and interests, so sports or books or crafts. Buying a small related gift shows that you're getting to know them as a person, especially when it's meaningful and tailored to them, and that you understand what's important to them. I've even seen some really great moments in extension and nonprofits when people share or pass on resources. So it didn't cost anything, but maybe they shared a bookshelf they're not using, or the best chair ever if someone's going through a need or a health or something like that, to have a better chair to sit on. We all know now kitchen chairs aren't entirely comfortable like office chairs, and so that can be a big win. And you earn some blessings there if you give up your chair. So I think even making a sign for a colleague's office space can all be seen as a gift and speak that language of care. Words of affirmation. So this happens to be one of mine. And so words, both oral and written, can be used to affirm and encourage those around us. Some people prefer one-on-one communication, and others really value being praised in front of others. It's important to know that according to Gallup, folks tend to skew in not wanting to receive large public affirmation in front of a group. So If you suspect that words of affirmation is someone's care language, ask them about public recognition. And then here I put some pretty easy and quick tips. So email blast big wins. A lot of times we're working so quickly that there's not time to really celebrate those moments. And so emailing out a success or a highlight of a colleague or a supervisee to the county team, or maybe up the programmatic totem pole or to cabinet or commissioners, that's really great. And highlighting on social media, not only does it give a face to our offices, to the public online, but it also really recognizes that person as being outstanding in their language of care. The more specific you can be, the better. People who receive words of affirmation, it can come off as disingenuous or not authentic if you're very vague. And so being very specific and intentional with your words and praising them and recognizing them is important. And that kind of bleeds into whether it be in meetings or conversations, emails, notes, the more specific, the better with these folks. I'm not really monitoring the chat box. Can you check in there, Jared? Thanks.
Yeah, we had a couple of comments that were referring back to service and doing things together. So Courtney shared that they do rallies around big programs like plant distribution, 4-H judging or fair. And Aaron shared that last summer Montgomery County rallied around a co-op market that's going to Dayton. So they had 4-H FCS and SNAP-Ed as well as Central State.
Awesome.
That all went to the big event together and made smoothies and things. So yeah, some good ideas of working together. Yeah.
Great. Thank you guys for sharing. So we can go to the next one. So in short, the most important thing is to ask. Just by asking someone, it shows that you're caring and appreciating and really want to speak to them in ways that they value most and receive best. And then second to that is use what they say. It's important to be transparent and consistent, and be aware of expectations you set, including what you model. And so we'll get into that in a little bit, but you may be setting expectations. If you're emailing out, public praise, make sure that folks know why you're doing that. And if someone doesn't have that words of information, check in with them and say, hey, I don't want you to feel left out. I recognize, that you're having success and I care about you, but you let me know acts of service. So check in with them and make sure. According to Gallup, and they do a whole employee engagement, I'm going to facilitate her through that, but there are some top pet peeves that really portray a lack of caring. And so this is what not to do. People say that managers don't listen to what their direct reports are trying to convey. And I think we all, have had moments of that. Not spending enough time with the person or genuine interest, not including them on important meetings or topics, playing on your phone or being distracted with email. That's very easy to slip into these days. And so that can come across as disingenuine, late or vague on employee reviews. And I know that's tricky with HR, but especially with folks of words of affirmation, that intentional time and those words on there are really valued by those folks. And so you want to make sure if that's not the way that you're typically used to giving, reach out to HR, and I'm sure they can help coach and provide guidance on that. Bottom line is there's no magical pill you can take to show authentic appreciation and caring. It's not always simple or easy, but it is worth it every time, short and long term. And so it's worth investing time to show caring in those relationships. So shifting gears a little bit, all that being said, I want to talk about how we receive care and how we let folks know how we receive care. And so as much as we'd all like to be superhumans in extension, none of us are mind readers. And so some of the responsibility does fall on us as individuals to actually tell others or express the ways in which we most feel valued. It may seem kind of like a strange conversation to have, but if you're finding yourself feeling undervalued, maybe ask, have I showed them how to best express care for me or my role or my work? Have you considered maybe what other appreciation language they're trying to demonstrate to you? And so I kind of want to talk about that right now. So we're going to split into breakout groups in a few minutes of about 3, because the more we practice, the better we get at things. I want you to try your hand at having this type of a conversation. I'd like you to express to others in the group how you prefer or would be like to show an appreciation. Try to be specific and realistic. And know that this is a safe space and open, so please be honest. And I'd ask the other group members, as you're taking turns, to provide your thoughts respectfully and afterwards in hopes of constructive coaching. If you're not comfortable yet identifying how you receive or sharing that, what you can do is share a past experience that stands out in your memory when you really felt cared about and appreciated. But then be open to feedback from the others on how you could frame that into a future conversation, requesting how you want to feel care or express care. Then we'll come back together as a large group and hopefully report out some of the conversation highlights from those that are comfortable. So I think Jared's gonna quickly put you into breakout groups of about 3-ish, and we'll give you 10 minutes and a warning before we're coming back. Is there any questions or anything like that? Sweet.
So I'm getting these set up real quick. As Holly said, we'll have about 10 minutes. You'll get a 10-second countdown then at the end of that 10 minutes before you come in, but you can come to the main room if you have questions or concerns at any time. So you should get the invite here in just a second. All right. Looks like we've got, I think, 3 in every room. There's only 2 in one of the rooms. They must have had somebody leave. Uh-oh, now there's only 1 person. I'm going to move that.
Can you shift them, add them to a 4?
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
We'll see if she gets the, there we go.
Check chat while we're moving here. 7. Oh, thank you for putting that in the chat box. So hopefully folks want to talk a little more. I can't tell how on video versus not.
And sometimes when they get into breakouts, they'll, you know, some people, if they have the capability at least.
Yeah, oh, that's true. So we'll give them until 11:30ish. Does that sound good?
Should be. Yep. And I do have a countdown, so it should close. It says 8.5 minutes. Yeah, so it should be right about 11:30.
Okay. Perfect timing, even though it felt like I whipped through those.
No, that's good. You did great.
Yeah. You said you added some, so we might get to that. Is that after?
Yeah, just at the very end. Basically, it actually will just kind of rehash some of what you just said.
Okay.
It's just a numbered list of like 8 ways that you can show care at work.
Perfect. Okay.
But it really will just rehash. So like I said, if we don't get to it, it's fine because you really already covered it all.
Okay. Perfect.
I might join. There's one room with only 2 people, so I may hop in there quick in case they need another voice.
Is this being recorded?
looks like we're getting most people back. Well, welcome back, everyone. Holly, are you ready for me to share again?
I am, yeah. Welcome back, everyone. So let's talk about what you discovered. Chances are, if you talked about it, other people have the same feelings. So without further ado, who wants to talk about what they might have learned in their group?
This is Jenny Morlock, and I was in group, I think we were in group 1, or meeting room 1. Our group talked a lot about, we had a lot of different ways of appreciation. First of all that we liked a lot was an email thank you. On Monday morning, you might have 36 emails in your box, and that one thank you that's in there can be very, very meaningful. We talked about, and I shared when I would get a thank you from a 4-H camper out of the blue, which was really kind of a special thing. And we talked about the mailbox, how now with what we're going through, how important receiving mail and how meaningful that is on even to send that and also to receive that. So those are some things that were very, very meaningful. And also social media. If you have a program going on and you receive a thank you from one of your clients publicly, that's really special too. So those were some of the things that we talked about.
Those are great examples.
I think in our group, I think we were number 10. All three of us seemed like it was like that words of affirmation. I think we were all, you know, relatively close in age within a 10-year span. And I think that the age thing makes a difference too, where you know, feel that appreciation or how you give that out. But words of affirmation was definitely one that we talked the most about.
In our group 3, the same thing was words of affirmation, along with, you know, it's okay to, you know, receive a card, you know, that say, hey, we appreciate what you're doing. And a gift card as well wouldn't be, you know, a little coffee or whatever it may be as well. But it's really those words of affirmation that was really the thing with our group.
And
we're group 3.
I'm not sure what group we were in, but I value working in a group with someone else, especially their educators. I'm in FCS, that tends to be one of the smaller program areas, but there was someone that posted in the chat that there was a day where they had a community event and it was FCS and 4-H and FNEP and SNAP-Ed and AG, and they all, you know, were there to promote, I think it was, I don't know, but it was smoothies and bikes. But those are kind of things that make me feel valued in the workplace. Just working together every once in a while.
Kind of piggybacking off of that, I was in the same group as Sherry, and kind of the same thing. You know, we kind of talked about acceptance or like inclusion in programs, and then also, and I just thought of this. We didn't really talk about it in the group, but I thought of this. The big thing also, like acceptance statewide. So if there's a group that invites you in to work on a statewide project, that's pretty awesome. And I think that kind of confirms that, hey, oh yeah, the stuff that I'm working on, the stuff that we're working on, it actually means something. And they actually value that I know what I'm doing. And I think that can go across the whole board with that word, not only words of affirmation and all that kind of stuff. We like to hear it, but that act of involving colleagues in with these projects.
Absolutely, that's a great example of feeling valued and spreading that value too. I think every program area, you know, community nutrition included, can be a part of those cross geographical boundary projects.
Another thing that we mentioned, and we talked heavily too about the words of affirmation being wonderful, both in written form, but also in email. So written like digital form, but also in like handwritten, because it takes a little bit more time. But for me also, I think the idea of care isn't just the affirmation, isn't just the appreciation piece, like the positive, but sometimes it's a supervisor or colleague who recognizes when I'm maybe not am performing super well. They recognize that and they help redirect, they help support, because that shows that they're really in it for me, right? If they didn't care about me, then they would just be like, all right, go be awful at your job and get fired. But the person who really takes time to recognize, like, okay, maybe she's not performing like she normally does. Let's figure out what's going on, and let's maybe redirect that to support her career and to support what she's doing.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Danae. If we had more time, I would love to dive into that, because I couldn't agree more with you. It takes a lot to believe in someone and to have them receive it that way. It's important that that conversation comes across as coaching and supportive and empowering, and not necessarily punitive. And so words of affirmation play highly in that conversation, and making sure that you're approaching it under believing in them and caring and wanting more for them that you know that they are capable of.
Mm-hmm.
Something that's a little different that we talked about was just the way we talked about words of affirmation, which was our common theme at work that we like to hear praise. But how that praise comes, if it's in front of a group or if it's one-on-one, is important, because in our group of three, two of us shared that it's not necessarily super comfortable to always hear that in front of a group, even if it's positive, sometimes especially if it's positive. So I thought that was interesting. And then forget what else I was gonna say. So I guess that's it.
Thank you for sharing. And hey, Courtney, I didn't know you were on there. Any other groups want to share out?
The group I was in, all three of us were people that didn't need a lot of appreciation, and it just the simple words, like others were saying, of thank you when something was done and that it was appreciated, but that every once in a while it was nice to get something a little bit different. We talked about the fact that sometimes people think it's money that makes a difference, and for us, that really wasn't something. We're sort of self-motivated to keep moving forward and doing the work that we do anyway, because we recognize we're helping others. So it's not really money, it's the really simple things that have already been spoken to.
That's a good and unique perspective. Don't broadcast that too loudly to HR though.
Promise I won't. Yeah, don't tell them
I'm
anything.
kidding.
And Holly, a thought I had as I'm just listening to people here, I was just sharing with you before everybody hopped on that I started my career in student affairs. And so that's typically a group of professionals who are pretty outgoing, maybe a little bit younger, pretty outgoing. So when you do this type of stuff with them, they're like, we want to have parties and we want to be out in front of everybody. And, you know, most of this group was like, just a nice card or like a simple thank you. So I guess in my head, that's just showing me really pay attention to the groups you're working with, right? Because, and like you're saying, like, what is their language that they appreciate? And sometimes it might stretch you. Like I don't want a big party and I don't want to be out in front of people. So I was the oddball in student affairs. But it might stretch me to do that for people, but it's what they need and what they want at times.
Absolutely.
I know the group that I was in, we actually talked a lot about the words of affirmation, as you said, but we also said acts of service, like something as simple as turning the coffee pot on because you know that your educator has meetings right off the rip and it's going to be all day long, or making sure that copy machine's full of paper, even if you are busy yourself and running to go to another class, or just little things like that where you, I guess when you're looking at everybody as a whole and not just yourself, it makes you feel appreciated that what you need to do next is just as important as what that person's doing. So even like we were saying, like at home, if my husband pours me a cup of coffee and brings it to me, that is worth more than if he were to show up with flowers. Like, it's not so much buying things and gifts, it's the acts of service of things that you would really want. And then the office, that can really go a long way.
Absolutely. Those are such good, tangible examples and points. Say it a little louder about the partners and the roommates bringing coffee.
It's liquid gold in my house, so.
Or even hot cocoa if you're Patrice.
Actually, Holly, that's funny that you just said hot cocoa. As you know, my previous position was event planner. There were people who I learned they don't drink coffee or tea. And so certain events, if I knew that a group of people were coming, I would do hot cocoa instead because I knew. So again, it's those little details of knowing like who you're planning for, what you're working with. And yeah, it's funny. It took me a while to learn who it was, but it was neat. Then once I finally got it, they're like, oh, thanks so much for the hot chocolate.
I'm not sure how many groups we have, but I think everyone has reported out. Yeah, I think so.
I think pretty close, yeah. We had about 11 groups, I think.
Yeah. So moving on, we did give some resources here on the next slide. So obviously HR is always there. And I would also venture LOD has been wonderful, and so reaching out to them. Most importantly, like talking to the person, people, groups that you want to show caring and appreciation of, reaching out to them first. I'm here as well. My door is open, literally and figuratively. And then I really encourage people to look up Gallup employee engagement. I found that when you go through those exercises, it really shows it's self-reflective for yourself, and maybe identify something that you might not see, or helps you when you're stretching, like Jared talked about, to respond to the environment or environments that you might be on any given basis. And then I think Jared has some more resources he wanted to chat about too.
Yeah, so I just kind of added a couple here. And so LOD, we're here, as Holly said. A couple of things that I found as I was searching through that I think had some good practical pieces to go along with what Holly's talked about today. This the Muse is actually kind of an HR focused website, so they have tons of good stuff about just about any topic you can think of. But that specific article there was 8 things to give to your employees, and so I've listed those 8 things out here that I'll talk about here in just a second, but that kind of expands on them a little bit more. The Society for Human Resource Management, or SHRM, SHRM is kind of what it's better known as. That again is like the professional association for HR. So they have a lot of resources on their page as well. And then this Sheila Margolis is somebody who I found who actually does some research in this. And it's really, really focused more on like culture than it doesn't really say care anywhere specifically, but it focuses more on culture. And so that's another page. She kind of has a nice framework for care within your culture at work. So those are some resources that will get posted along with this presentation. And then, like I said, I'll talk about that one article from the Muse. Again, these are things that Holly mentioned, most of them, but just a little different way of looking at it through that article. So listen, and again, not just looking like you're listening, but truly that uninterrupted time with those people. And so one of the biggest things I know when I'm maybe talking to a supervisor or somebody about a big project is when they actually like put their cell phone away, right? And again, I think it's become pretty commonplace for people to leave their phones like on the table or whatever. But if you actually put that away, and Holly started with a quote from Simon Sinek. He actually has a video that talks about cell phones as well, that there is a difference, even if the cell phone was present on top of the table, even if it was at the end of the table, it had a negative impact on the interaction than if it was not visible. So it's kind of a neat thing to think about, but really uninterrupted. Sometimes that casual one-on-one time helps people a lot. She talked about specific compliments. So instead of just saying, thanks for your hard work, you can say, thanks for the long hours and, you know, extra work that you put in on camp this week or something like that. But the more specific, the more meaningful it usually is. Opportunities, we talked about a little bit, but if you find events for them to attend, new assignments that maybe are stretching them a little bit, not just to give them more work, but as a true growth opportunity, those are huge for most people. Trust, so allowing people to really take the lead on a new project or an initiative, or maybe it's something they have been working on, but you've really required them to check in with you a lot. And you know what, you're comfortable, you've done this, you're great at it. Why don't you just start running with it instead of checking all the time? So those are some good pieces. Open door, I think this is one thing that Extension typically does pretty well. We really have quite a bit of access from colleague to colleague and, you know, up and down the org chart as well. But just so you know that you are accessible to people. And also it encourages that casual talk too, not just always the big things that you need to come in and speak with people about, but just the casual conversation that people can have when they're passing your door and it's open, rather than just always being a closed door. Outside feedback, it's huge for me when my supervisor maybe receives a compliment from somebody that I planned an event for, and it didn't come straight to me, but they actually told it to my supervisor, and then my supervisor shares that with me. That's huge. So if you ever get compliments about colleagues or people that report to you, make sure you're passing that along. And as Danae kind of mentioned, the feedback portion too, even if it's not always positive, but showing them, you know, here's some suggestions for the next time. A treat. So as I was doing a lot of research, it must have been a lot of private corporate companies, because they were talking about vacations and cars and days off and all this kind of stuff. So a lot of the stuff that I think really applies to us boils down to simple things. So a treat, so bringing coffee and donuts for the office, or maybe coffee and fruit if we want to be a little bit healthier. Happy hour as a team, or one of these events that we talked about going to as a team. Just a lot of those things. I will share, as I work across this system quite a bit, I do hear a lot of people sometimes say that they miss a team environment. We do have a lot of autonomy within Extension, and a lot of people that are maybe like 1 or 2 person units. So anytime you can encourage that teamwork feeling, I think our people really soak that in. And then just a simple thanks. Don't forget, you know, a lot of times we get busy and we maybe move right on to the next project or something, the next task, but we really need to say thank you. And like it says there, the handwritten note says everybody's picked up on today is usually a huge bonus if you take the time out to do that. That's all I really had to add. That's just a few more of those resources for you. I think that's it. Holly, did you have anything else to add?
I don't. We have, if people want to give any of their thoughts or questions that they had coming into today, we're here to answer. I believe some of this is going to be posted, like Jared said. I can put my email in the chat box if anyone wants to reach out to me more directly. I'm here.
Yep, and me too. And as Holly said, please feel free to ask questions, whether it's on this specific topic or anything else that LOD can help with. We've got a handful of our members here as well. So, but we thank you all for joining us today. And Holly, a big thank you to you. I'll get you a handwritten note pretty soon. But thank you very much for your time to
Good. She might want a cookie.
Yeah, all right.
Send her one of those.
Actually, I just want one of those songs. Can you send me a link to those songs, the jams when we were starting?
Sure. Yeah. Yep, I can. So thank you very much, though, for your time today and for closing out this series on team engagement. So thanks for joining us, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.